I just heard stressed. I heard this is different. This is more challenging. So talk to me.
Stress. That's all I got. No,
Am I-
so for me, what is the most challenging thing about myself is I feel like I know too much. And what I mean by that is because I know a lot, I never know where to start because I'm trying to implement a lot of stuff at once. And so I keep thinking about back to the one thing. I actually started that book before I joined Keller Williams. I haven't finished it yet, but it's on my nightstand. I am committed to finish it at the latest by mid-October. Um, so that is my developmental goals for myself that we were working on in our last bowl, writing out what we're going to do each month to improve. Um, but then like when I'm sitting in bold, I get so many more ideas. And it's a lot of high anxiety for me because of all the ideas that I'm getting while I'm sitting in bold.
Ideas to build business, ideas to
Build
um
business, marketing, um, and the most stressful thing is is talking to 100 people. I've actually been adding 25 contacts a week, but I haven't actually, for the past 2 weeks at least, haven't met the goal of talking to 100 people.
right.
I've been really focusing more on organizing a lot of the people in groups that I'm already a part of and adding those folks into my contacts. So as I've been doing that, like I realized, oh my gosh, I know a lot of people. I don't always talk to them on a regular basis, but I have all their contact information. Um, so I have been working to organize those contacts, which in turn I have fallen short of the 100 contacts a week goal.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I've been there too, and I struggled to get 100 myself. The last 2 weeks have been easy because I've been traveling. So, I've been meeting all these new people. Um, and it's not always that easy. Um, so, I've been standing at a gas station at 8:30 the night before Bold, getting my last 8 people. At least to say, hey, while I'm pumping gas, just to let you know I'm in real estate. It's nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And that, go on to the next one. It's simple, it's not easy, right? Um,
Simple and not easy.
yep.
Yep, that's what I've done too. I was doing a bold 100 and I ran out of people to talk to, so I drove and got gas and talked to them. And yeah, yep, just everyone I come in contact to these last few weeks, I've been, adding them to my 100 list. While when I did bold last year, I got the contacts in because I hadn't added to my database yet. So it worked out good. And this
Yeah.
year I don't add as many contacts.
Yeah. And of course, the good thing is if you've got contacts from elsewhere, it's, reconnecting. Um, Something Andrew will share, he got yesterday, he spent the day with Gary Keller yesterday. And um, one of the things there, someone said, in the history of calling a past client, no one has ever said, well, you're supposed to call me 33 other times. Why haven't you? Like, we know we're supposed to do that. That's our goal, to reach out and do the 36 touch. But the client doesn't know that. They just think you're reaching out to say, hey, and update them and, you know, connect, reconnect. So, um, and I'll tell you, I've got
Yeah, that's
2,000
true.
and 2,100 and something in my contact base. And what I've decided to do was I took the DTD2 and I put that into my, like this week I'm working on the letters from the DT R2D2 thing in my database. So I'm fixing, adding, dripping those things as those letters. I'm doing it the right way. So does that make sense or help? Like 2,000's overwhelming. Y'all are quiet. Come on.
I've been working on databases, getting it tagged correctly for the
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
tag correctly on a drip. Um, looking to see if they had a transaction. The worst thing ever is like Jesse said last week in Bold. Have you ever had a contact and you go to reach out and they passed away and you didn't know it? It's very awkward. I can tell you from experience that feels weird. I've been there. That's happened. Um, so don't be that agent. Hey, Katrina, how was your open house?
I did not do an open house this weekend. I did one last weekend, and that was the first time that absolutely no one showed up for it. So
And you still had marketing in your name, right?
I did, yeah.
I saw it on Facebook. Like I saw your marketing. So no one else knows no one showed up. And that still you got a house out on the market with your contact info in front of it. And like I say, have you ever seen an unsuccessful realtor on social media? No. Um, so to the world, it looks like you had a great open house at this address last weekend, right?
More than likely, yeah.
Yeah, they don't know any different. They think you held an open house and people showed up. Um, I will say right now, we just talked about this. The market is a little wonky for those that are newer or not experienced it before. We're getting closer to a pre-COVID market. We were talking about days on market today I just came from Hillsborough. So we're talking about days on market. If you're looking at, if you sign a listing agreement for 6 months, you don't expect it to sell on, the 6th month, the 30th day of that month. You expect it to sell within no less than half of that duration. So, days on market in a balanced market is 4 to 6 months. And the ideal window is if you put a listing in that it's under contract within 3 months. We're getting closer to a balanced market, which means there's houses, there's buyers, and they're connecting. You're seeing some price drops, not a lot. You're seeing more. You're seeing negotiations with contracts about repairs. In a balanced market, each side has equal leverage, and it's more of a win-win than it is I'm not doing that I can just go to the next seller. I'm not going to do that. I can just go to the next buyer. So we're seeing more negotiation happening. So as we go into that, we need to brush up on our negotiation skills and skill set. I will see if we can't get us some resources around that, just knowing that's where we are right now. And I don't foresee us changing anytime soon. I only see it becoming more and more balanced. Um, so I want to talk about 220, because that's where we're seeing on a form, we're seeing a lot of issues with agents and offices. We're getting them from other offices because they don't have it trained correctly and the agents aren't informed about the right way to fill something out. So, we're not those folks here. I'm logging in, y'all. 203 sorry. Okay, there we go. 220. It's coming up, so give me one moment. It's funny working with 3 screens now. I'm on a Zoom. Sorry, y'all. Let me share screen with you. Okay. Hopefully you all are seeing Form 220, right? Partially.
I'm seeing it, yes.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
this is not working. Can I hide this thing, y'all? Let me stop share. Make this bigger. And now I can share. Okay, 220. 220, I just came from a meeting Thursday in Durham with the attorneys for North Carolina, and 220 was really meant to just replace the bottom of a listing MLS sheet. So before August 17th, you just scrolled to the bottom of the MLS sheet and it said, 3, 2.5, 2.4, 2, 1, whatever it was. And you knew going into it, that's what the compensation was on the other side. Now, your agreement with your client may have been a different number. And most always, agents just accepted what was at the bottom of that MLS sheet. Like if they had said 3% for a buyer's agent agreement on their buyer agency, and then they went to the MLS and found a 2.5, then they just got paid 2.5 at the table, the settlement. And that they just didn't go after that additional 0.5%, even though the client had agreed to it, that 3% would be the fee. We just inevitably just coughed that up and just took whatever was at the bottom. So 220 was really meant to just replace the MLS sheet at the bottom to notify the attorneys and both parties the agreed amount compensation. Therefore, that's why there's a seller, a buyer, and a property. You don't use this for sale by owner. You use the 150 for sale by owner. The fee almost always will be paid. This is where people are missing it right here. Almost always it's being paid by the listing firm. If they are agreeing to pay your compensation before you negotiate. So on the listing agreement, when the agent and the seller sat down, wrote up the listing agreement, and they agreed to have cooperating compensation, that then listing firm is what gets checked. And for some reason, everyone's checking seller. The only time you would check seller is in the listing agreement, the seller chose not to compensate and only pay their own agent. However, in negotiations with an offer to purchase, they decided to go back and add compensation for the other side. That's when you would check seller. So almost always, if there's compensation from the other side, you're going to check listing firm right here. That's when everyone's missing. Now you can get paid a percent or you can get paid a flat fee. The other thing that has to happen is if what you're accepting in this box has a conflict with what's on your agency agreement. So say the listing firm from the seller has offered 2.5 and you on your buyer agency said 3, that you still have to deal with that 0.5% now. You can't just wave it off and it's nowhere. You have to update 710, which is your agency agreement, if you decide to lower your 3 to a 2.5, which is what's being offered. Now legally, you have to have your agency agreement has to match what you're accepting. Or if you're not going to accept what is being offered and there's still a 0.5% out there, then your client still owes the 0.5%. And you give this 220 to the attorney. They know that 2.5 is coming from the listing firm. as a part of the transaction, and they will add in the other 0.5% that the buyer has to bring to settlement as a part of closing costs. Now, therein lies a problem for a lot of buyers. They don't have the 0.5%, or the 0.5% will knock them out of qualifying for the loan. So the lender and the attorney both need to know if you are going to charge a fee that's extra over and above what is agreed on 220 to because again, we had that actually happen last week when a buyer couldn't qualify. The agent was expecting that money, and then all of a sudden the 0.5% threw him out of qualification. So we had to reduce our rate to a different amount so the buyer could still qualify. Any questions on that? Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I do have a question. So let's say the buyer agency agreement says 3%, and then the house that we find is 2.5. We could go in and cross out the 3%, change it to 2.5, and have the buyer initial that, and then we're all good, right?
Yep, you can go
Perfect.
in and do it just like you do an updated page 17 and upload that difference.
Yeah.
You can do an updated
Okay.
page 2 or 3, whatever it is. And
Okay.
or you can do a 710, it's just the one form.
Okay.
The 710
Gotcha.
would update. So
Yeah. Good.
the other
Good. Good.
go ahead.
Nope. I was just saying good.
Okay, yeah. So right there is what I'm seeing most is it's not coming from the listing firm. I'm seeing it from the seller all the time. And we're having to send it back because that's not the way this form was meant. Like literally that came from an attorney's mouth on Thursday. We are using this form incorrectly. And that the attorney said it's our fault. We did not anticipate you to be using the way you are. So in October, for the first time ever, they're actually doing another release of updated forms. And the reason being is forms are only updated every July normally. However, with this current climate and current sue happy environment, they had to put out these forms, and then they had to see how we reacted as agents and how the public reacted to our explanation of them. And they've come across some things they still need to update to tighten up, make it even more succinct and easier to follow. One of the things they're updating is the buyer's agency agreement. So look for that to be shorter. And again, using this 220 we used it as a not the way it was intended. It was meant to be only kind of informational, not, what we're doing with it, basically. So the other thing with this, if the other thing that we're seeing is if we agreed to a lower amount, say we only on our agency it says 2.5 and they're offering 3 on the other side, you also have to update with the 710. That's fine that you get paid more if your client's okay with it. So either way, if there's a variation or a conflicting number on this form or your agency, they both have to coincide. So even if it's an increase, that's great. We love that. Make sure it matches. The other thing is, if we're running into, and this was news to me, so your sellers agreed that we charge 6%, and we agreed to 3, okay? On the other side of the transaction, when we got an offer to purchase, it said 2.5. Well, we agreed to 3. So that doesn't me as an agent get now on the list side 3.5. The difference, that 0.5% really goes back to the seller as a lower fee. So it was never meant for us because we agreed to the the percent we listed and how much we were going to share. Unless your client says, yeah, you can keep the extra, you can't keep that. It's not meant that way. It's meant much like if they seller offers closing costs and say you ask for 5,000 and closing cost is only 4,600. That 400 goes back to the seller. It doesn't get credited to the buyer. You can't over accept unless the client says it's okay. Does that make sense? That was a biggie in the room when it was all Bics and it was a room of attorneys and all Bics. You can imagine how fun that was. Um, so, does that make sense? You can only get paid basically what you agreed to on the form. If there's any
Yep, that
overage
makes
or a
sense.
difference, you got to give it back. It goes back to whomever it belongs to. So, and it says the fee will be earned by the firm upon the buyer and seller signing contracts. So there's been a lot of, well, I'm not going to get this signed. It's not even enforceable until you get a written contract signed. So this means absolutely nothing until you get a contract. So the other thing that everybody was running into was this date. The date can be whatever. It can be 6 months whenever your agency ends. It can be 3 months. You think that's how long it's going to take to close it. It can be the day after settlement. We don't care what this date is as long as the date's there. So, if you get an offer and you're negotiating and they want to know if they get paid, you can make this for one day. Like, I agree to pay this for one day, give us the offer. And then we're under contract because the written contract was accepted. Does that make sense? So this is just not hanging out there with, oh, they're going to pay this. So just know that this is a document that can be still negotiated back and forth. They can be added, it can be removed, it meant to be a living, moving document. So does that help?
Yep.
He also said that all 4 spots weren't required. However, legally in this current society, he would not dare not have one of these boxes signed. So, and the buyer is acknowledging the receipt of the form, not that they're agreeing to or accepting or whatever. The buyer's really saying that they see the form and that's there. So, any questions on that? We good? Does that make sense? Y'all lost you.
No, I think that's pretty well explained for me at least.
And the only other thing is I don't like on here is there's not initials at the bottom of this page. If you look at every other document we have out there in the world, you either have a signature and an initial page. So if it were me, I would add signatures, initials on here. Just me. So that was a biggie.
So I just want to double check and make sure, and I'm sorry if this is a stupid question, but
There are no stupid questions, and that's true. I don't think so.
so with the adding signatures or adding the initials, is that something that we're allowed to do even if there aren't like the spaces for it in DocuSign?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you just drop it, you drag and drop an initial box at the bottom.
Okay.
Perfectly fine. The next one I wanted to share with everyone and talk about, because I love you all so much. Listing agreement. And some of you being PBs or early on may not have seen or used so much of a listing agreement. Let me share this. Okay. Y'all seen the listing agreement, right? I hope. Thumbs up or yes?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So what it says in here as you scroll down, there's 2 check boxes that you have to give them something. Right here. Receipt of sample forms. The seller acknowledges receipt of a sample offer to purchase. seller acknowledge a receipt of a copy of professional services disclosure. Right? That says you gave them a sample copy and they're acknowledging that they received it. So recently I implemented having a PSD at the end of your transaction for listing and buying. And there's been a lot of conversations around it, a lot of heated discussion around it. And my question is, why would we give them a sample if we didn't expect them to complete one at the end? Make sense? This is where y'all say yes.
Yes. Sorry, I was driving. My phone isn't very finger friendly right now.
No, quite all right. Quite all right. Quite all right. The reason the sample is saying, hey, these are all the folks that can be hired on your behalf to complete your transaction. And you give them a sample copy. And at the end, you fill out what was used, what was hired, and who the contacts are and who ordered it, and did they waive it. Again, they're expecting that because you just said, here's the sample of the folks can work on your behalf. And at the end, you tell them all the folks that actually did work on their behalf. They sign off on it. Makes, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. However, it's again wasn't a regular practice of the agents in the office. So also while we're here, I added flood maps as a requirement for all your transactions because you can see they went in and broke these up into different checkboxes. And if there's at the state level, focus on floods and wetlands and insurance. I felt like that as an office, we also need to be focused on it. And it is something we need to share with the client. No, the property is not located in a federal, state, or local flood area. No, it's not affected by water or riparian issues such as a creek buffer or wetlands. No, the seller doesn't have insurance. So and you can prove that on the map that lot 12 in neighborhood X on the flood map doesn't have anything. And I'll actually pull one up for you. Does that make sense? Before you have any questions on that?
Yep.
The reason being is their focus, of course. If they're going to focus on it, we better focus on it because it's going to be, it'll be an issue if we don't. How you get those, let me just take you to the place so that you're not lost. Oh no, we lost Katrina. You can get those from lots of places. Here, FEMA.gov, flood and flood maps. You just click on that. And flood maps, you want to data viewer or geospatial data, you can look up the address. And you can see if it's in a flood zone. So I may have just clicked on the wrong thing, sorry.
Doesn't the MLS tell us if it's in a flood zone too? I know Triad
Um,
has a page.
They do. That's why the fail safe is always going to FEMA.gov. The reason I say that
Gotcha.
is they're the ones that decide on the map itself anyway.
Okay.
So this would always be the most accurate.
Okay.
So sometimes there might be a lag time, but literally you just type in your address. I'm gonna type in my house. There it is, Harbor Ridge Drive in Greensboro. And I can search that and you can see I actually live on a lake. This is the water behind my house. However, I am not in a flood zone.
Nice. Cool.
So literally, you can see that's my house right there. There's a lake and the buffer's there. However, I'm not in a flood zone. So if I was going to a listing appointment to meet with myself, I would say, hey, and would this set you aside at a listing appointment? Someone who's already done their research. Oh, in
Yes.
preparation for our meeting, I did look up your home to make sure that it wasn't in a flood zone. Um, I can assure you that I doubt there's agents out there that's um gone that step sometimes.
Can
So
you find a property that's in a flood zone to show us what it would look like?
sure, the very first house I ever sold in my life was on a flood zone. And let me think of the address right quick. Give me a second. Um, I'll stop sharing, I'll find it. So give me a sec. Um, gosh, what was the name of the address? I'll find it. Give me a second. I'm going to the house where it is. I'll just find it on the map. Shoot. And us being around the Hall River, we have a lot of potential flooding. Okay, so I jumped to that, and now let me jump to this street.
While you're looking at that, can I
Yeah.
ask you, excuse me, a question about I have a buyer under contract and we're gonna have some crawl space repairs done. We're still waiting on some estimates and not out of our due diligence period yet. My client keeps thinking that we're gonna have to push closing back because uh, I'm pretty sure her thinking is she wants to make sure the work is done before she moves in. Now, that, like, if the seller agrees to have the work done and has it in writing that the contractor's coming, but maybe they can't come out for 3 to 4 weeks or something, we still need to close, right?
Yes. So what can happen is if the attorney will do it, I remember the address, it's 126 Justin Court. So if the attorney will do it, you hold that money in escrow
Okay.
to be paid to that. They usually like write it, the invoice amount, and they write it to that vendor. Or they may write
Okay.
a check just directly to that vendor and it's held until it's paid, until the work
Okay.
is done.
Okay.
So looking at Justin Court, can y'all see this?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So this is the house,
Okay.
and the lot, the very, very tippy back corner of the lot was in the flood zone. The house is
Mm.
not in the flood zone,
Okay,
only
I
that,
see.
like the
Yep.
lot was. So because the lot was in the flood zone, not in the flood zone, because the house wasn't, it was perfectly fine, shouldn't have to have insurance. And
Mm.
that is a tributary right there of the Hall River. Because
Mhm.
if you look right down the street, um, right up the street is the Hall River right there.
Wow.
So, and right there is right off of Glencoe Village.
Mhm.
So literally that's all of Glencoe is right here.
Mhm.
So there's a creek and stream that feed into it, and that's why Justin Court was in a flood zone.
Mhm.
However, it didn't affect the insurance because the house was not in it, the lot was.
Nice.
So does that help?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. You could go to FEMA flood maps. You could go to ncfloodmaps.com or .org, whatever it is, NC flood maps. It'll pre-fill for you. Um, because um, that's where you're going to get the most accurate information. It's FEMA.gov or NC flood maps, and it pops up with an overlay. You could also get it in your GIS as an overlay if you're looking at the property from a GIS look. And just like you said, Marla, earlier, you can find it in the as a layer you can add into the MLS in the mapping. Um, to me, FEMA is always the most accurate because they're the ones that created it. So that's where I always go to be double check and be safe. Likewise, you can do the same thing with USDA. Like if you want to see if a house will qualify for USDA, you can do USDA map, eligibility map, the very same way. You can do a search. Any of the lenders usually will look it up for you. But it's also, you can look for yourself. And it's under USDA eligibility, and you can accept this and do mapping. It's got a map. Hopefully ours in this, yeah. And you just type in the address. So let's say 126 Justin, where I was at. And it says this address is not located in an eligible area. So I couldn't offer USDA financing if I was to list this house. So if I was over here in this gray area, it is eligible. So some of the green level stuff is over there on the outskirts, which you can see as you get to the city center. It's not going to cover part of Witsit is USDA eligible, like Sedalia, Witsit.
Yep, I
Um,
got my house with a USDA loan.
yeah, so Gibsonville, so you can see the overlay of address. You just type it in and check it out. Um, so those are the biggies I had this week to cover. Um, and any questions from y'all, anything you want to talk about or specifics?
I just had a quick question about land. I haven't closed any land deals, and I had an inquiry today. A piece of land in Eden, half acre, it's city sewer and water. And only restrictions are no mobile manufactured homes, but they can do stick built. So $4,000 for this piece of land, and it's an op city lead. So if they pursue it, what more do I need to investigate for them and do for them? And do I need I need to have a buyer agency agreement before they sign anything, like not to show them the land, but um and I
Right.
told
For
them to just go
land, you
look at it.
don't have to have the agency. You're correct, because it's not
Right.
crossing a threshold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I mean, the offer to purchase is a 12T, the 760, the PS professional services is the same.
Okay.
Um, you know, do look for I would definitely get those, um,
Yeah.
the flood map. I would check
Okay.
out to see if there's any, you know, you already picked up the deed to see if there's restrictions. Um,
I didn't, but I trusted the other agent.
and I necessarily wouldn't, because,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
if if they said it was and we found out different, then it's on them, not on us.
Yeah.
It's on us to definitely double check to make
Yeah.
sure. Um,
Okay.
and you know, they're probably going to ask, okay, if water and sewer is available, how much is it going to cost to connect? So you
Okay.
probably need to call the services utilities to find out,
Okay.
because that's going to be an expense.
Right.
Often what we have found in a lot of people looking for land, they're working with like a Clayton Homes or
Yeah.
the other, I can't think of the other one off my head right quick. Um, they will buy the land and
Mm-hmm.
use you as the buyer's agent, but then
Yeah.
they roll it into the whole package of the house.
Right.
So they don't use you on the house, they use you on the land.
Right. Yeah.
And usually with land, it's a flat fee. You don't get a percent.
Yeah, that's what this one is. It's $500.
Yeah,
I'm,
because ten
I'm
percent of a 4,000, you get $40. Like,
right.
you know.
Right.
And you're only
Yeah.
getting half of that, so it's 5%, 4,000.
Right.
So,
Yes. And then
um,
Keller Williams gets their cut. Op City gets their cut. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Marla gets a candy bar.
exactly. Um, but yeah, with
Um,
land, I would definitely do my homework on expenses and to connect to services, if it's going to be sewer or well, if it's public, and if it's going to be sewer or well, that's not this scenario, it doesn't sound like, but you would
right.
need to know if there's a soil or a health department record of anything on the topography of the, if
Yeah.
they've done a site test yet or not,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and of
Cool.
course, there is a land disclosure. Here's the tricky thing about the land disclosure. The land disclosure is not a requirement.
Mm.
However, if you don't receive one in 3 days of the offer, you can terminate. So it's not a requirement, but you can terminate if you don't get it. So
What's a land disclosure? It's like the RPods, but it's
yep,
for land.
yep. And it's brand
Oh.
new. It started July 1st. So there should
Oh,
be
okay.
a land disclosure. And again, it's
Okay.
not required.
Right.
However, if you don't get it within 3 days, you can terminate the contract with no fault.
Okay.
Get
Hmm.
your due diligence in earnest.
That
Gotcha.
sounds pretty required.
So it might as well be required. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
Like if you get a chance to terminate the contract without having it, that sounds pretty required.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. So if I'm the listing agent, I was representing seller and you didn't give me that form because it wasn't required, but then somebody gave me a deposit and walked because of it, I'd be kind of pissed. Um,
Yep.
so now there are lots of details on that land disclosure. I would pull one up and check it out. Like,
Okay.
we were going through it yesterday with the agent that's 18 years in the business, and she was just flabbergasted at, like, how the questions it was asking and the research it was going to go to. And I said, well, at the end of the day, the whole thing is to protect you and the client. Um, so these are things that we should know about a piece of property before we buy it. So,
Definitely. Good, good,
Hmm.
good.
Did I stop share? I think I did.
Yeah, you're not sharing anything right now.
Yeah.
We
So
just get to see your handsome face.
I don't know about that. I'll break the screen.
That's-
I would be remiss if we didn't talk about safety for a minute. Um, we were in um, let me say we've been in a nasty transaction for about 2 weeks. Well, the transaction's been about, 6 months. Um, however, I logged into Forewarn just out of hunch. Um, and the, the agent was shocked. So, hold on. There's a two-step process to forewarn. I gotta get my text code. My text code to know I'm who I am. Okay. So let me share this with you. I'm in forewarn now. Um, I'm gonna type in this number and you sorry, I was going to, there we are. So this is the number for the client. Look at that.
Yeah. Wow. Yep. Can you click on the yellow?
Oh, absolutely.
I can't really see it because I'm on my phone. What is the yellow?
381 possible criminal infractions.
Oh,
See, so the first one is speeding.
Okay, not a problem.
Then you got so much unavailable. And then,
Revoking
yeah,
suspended tag. Okay.
yeah.
Permitting a
Permit to-
vehicle, no
No
insurance.
insurance,
Wait,
marijuana.
possession.
Yep.
Possession with an open container.
Uh-huh. Unavailable,
Revoked
wow.
revoked,
tag,
suspended,
no
no
insurance.
insurance, no license.
Let's
Yeah, you've
see.
got someone who does not obey the law, that's for sure.
Um, Failure to
Failure
appear,
to appear, intoxicated and
intoxicated and
disruptive.
disruptive, resisting an officer,
Yep, simple
Wow.
assault.
assault, larceny,
Mm-hmm.
assault on a female,
Mm-hmm.
breaking and entering, to terrorize.
Or injure. Oh boy.
So worthless checks. This person might not qualify to purchase.
Because they might be lying about their money, their financial situation.
Yep, communicating threats,
Yeah.
trespassing. On this, you can see the other phone records, the other addresses with this phone. The vehicles, like you can see, this is a lot of information, aliases. Um,
I use it all the time because with Hilla and I doing property management, we screen through Zillow and it might say 0 records found or 1 record found. And then I go take their number to forewarn and be like, okay, so there's a little bit more than 0. What does, since Zillow said 0, why don't they count this? Maybe because it was 5 years old. I don't know. But um, yeah, and then a lot of people that I get inquiring about rentals, I'm like, well, if your credit score is there and you've got the finances, but your criminal history is bad, have you ever thought about buying? So I take my risks, but I wouldn't go alone.
yeah. So again, if I was a listing agent and that was the number before I went out and met them, if I had simple assault on a female and trespassing and intoxication and assault on an officer, I mean, that might not, granted, look at the date, look at the age, you know, some of those were back in 17 and 18. If they were speeding and just common infractions, that none of those are protected classes that we just talked about. So you're not violating housing with your own safety because I don't know who that phone number is or who that person is, or, I'm just looking out for my own safety. So, it being safety month, I would be a bad Bic if I didn't talk to you about, safety. So, what questions? We all good?
I'm good. How about you, Shanice?
Yep, I think I'm good. I just have a comment. I want to just say thank you, Jason, for being the awesome BIC that you are. Um,
Yes.
I I I always appreciate your calm demeanor. I don't know how you
Yes.
maintain it, but
Right.
um, I appreciate it. Because we talked briefly yesterday, but that was kind of a stressful thing for me yesterday, and kind of hearing your voice and talking with you, it was like, okay, this is not a big deal.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Often, if I always try to, sometimes there's lots of noise. And my attempt is to look at what's causing the noise and can we fix it? And the
yeah,
noise is not my problem or my solution. Um, and the more I spend in the noise, the more time I've wasted. And it's just
yeah,
not productive. And it's usually there's some hurt feelings involved. And, I do not stay in the noise. I just don't. And I always one, think about all the parties involved. And then I think about, how can we fix this? What's the best route forward? How can we make this right? Is it give and take? Is it one side more than the other? Is it part of the office participating? The second thing I look at is can I use this to make it a better training experience? Or, is this something for other agents to be aware of? So, thank you. That means the world. Often my world is not always positive. So I appreciate that. After, we have a call every morning, and sometimes, we talk about some difficult stuff in the mornings because it's leadership, and, we're constantly faced to lead. And leadership is not something easy. So I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
I agree 100% with Shanice. You have the best demeanor for your position, and you are 100% of what keeps me at Keller Williams Central. Because I don't like paying that much, and I could easily go somewhere else, but I would not get a Jason, and I need my Jason.
Yeah, we were
Yep.
in kind of a nasty transaction and recently, and I discovered, oh my gosh, that agent has not been made aware of all the changes.
Mm.
And the reason we're having this issue is because not the agent. To me, it falls back on the BIC that,
Yeah.
they've got one BIC for the whole state. And what
Wow.
I just can't answer that question.
Wow. Yep.
Um, and I know that person, if they had an issue, they not talking to a BIC yesterday. I mean, they're not fielding a call, not yours, Shanice, another, with this transaction. And I got involved, and I don't weigh in. I give you your options. This is yes or no, or maybe. And then I can't tell an agent to spend more money on a transaction or buy a fridge, or, and that's not my role. My role is to protect the firm and protect the agent. And again, to be as calm about it as possible. So, but I
You
appreciate that.
do it amazing.
That means the world. I thank you, thank you, thank you. So, all right,
Yes.
I will give you back your afternoon, your 4 minutes. We've kept you long enough, and y'all have an awesome week. Next, we got several things coming up this week. Wind down Wednesdays tomorrow. There is Thursday. There's tomorrow. There's a broker lunch with Rachel Zamorsky out in Mebane. If you want to go have lunch with her, she's got a pretty cool listing. Then Thursday, there's something on Thursday. Oh, Bold. Thursday we got Bold. And then there is also Thursday, if you're not, there's a intro to title insurance, to how to understand it. Also Thursday. And then next Tuesday's jam-packed. We've got title insurance and home insurance. What's the difference? And then we've got team meeting. And then we've got Mo Anderson, who's, if you don't do anything on next Tuesday, come be here at 3 o'clock for that. So it's worth every moment of your time next week for that one. So, all right, hey, big hug. Have an awesome
Awesome.
couple of
Thanks,
days, and
Jason.
leave me call me. All right, bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.